with John Impemba and James Grande.
What's going on, FANation? John Impemba here with James Grande. Welcome into the Fantasy Alarm NBA DFS Playbook live show. We got 6 games here on a Monday, and what is going to be a weird week in the NBA. Only one game tomorrow, no games Wednesday, and then we get back with a short a slate on Thursday and Friday, kind of like get back to normalcy here. But this will be our last live show for a few days here as the calendar kicks down. So we appreciate all of you who are tuning in. Hit that like, that share, that subscribe button. Free way to support the work we got going on here. Grande was on the playbook today, so he knows this slate intimately. And he's been talking pretty confidently about it, so I'm excited to break it down with him here today. We appreciate you all for tuning in. I see 3 of you popping in the chat. The Prince is chasing green tonight. The Prince, we are hoping to get you in the money tonight as well. And then Warren popping in, saying, hey, if you have any comments, throw them in the chat. We'll be happy to throw them up on the board for all of you. We'll help you build some winning lineups here this evening. Grande, 6 games, interesting matchups. Some players we're waiting on for news, potentially. You're hopeful that no major changes occur on this slate?
None. 0.
You feel like you got a good read on what we got going on here today. So let's just give an overview quickly. What is it about tonight that you like? What are you targeting as like a priority for you?
I mean, there's 2 games on the board that's better than everyone else. There's 3 games with sub 220 implied totals, 2 with implied totals of 237 or better. There's, a large gap in between the 7 p.m. window and then the 10 p.m. window. So there's like 2 sides of that coin where there's leverage if you try to guess if players are going to be in and out. And that, so like Denver, Sacramento has pretty big news. Christian Brown, we missed last night. He's questionable. And Keegan Murray was downgraded today to questionable. If you try to guess that those 2 players are going to miss and they don't miss, well, then you're in trouble because then there's not a lot to pivot to. Or vice versa, if they do miss, you have leverage on the field. But you can also say, like, there's a game with a 240 implied total that starts 2.5 hours before that late night window that you can load up on and feel pretty good about. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a very interesting 6-game slate with 2 games better than the rest. One side of a third game, I think, is really good. Mm-hmm. And then there's just some, a few ugly totals and possibly ugly basketball to be played. But yeah, I mean, it's a fun 6-gamer. And, I'm really holding on to it. And I really like it mostly because it's the last 6-gamer for the next 2 days. And I don't know what to do for the next 2 days afterwards. So
yeah. We all have to play the showdown slate tomorrow to keep our Iron Man streak going. Like they're forcing us into that. And then we have a day off, right? So it will be one of those situations where maybe the hockey boys come back. We go.
No, I'm not.
We had some fun. We had some good success.
It was fun
last year being hockky bros for a day. So.
Well, you have.
I've actually won
this
a hockey
year.
This year. That's true.
This year, you have had fun playing hockey. So,
that is true.
I'm not saying I'm not going to, but also this time last year, my daughter was just born and she was just sleeping all the time. Now she's just running around everywhere. I'm just like, man, I could just use a break for a day. So
yeah,
I might just take the day and just not worry about DFS for just one day. But
we'll see. We'll see if I can lure you into.
We will see.
With me. We'll see.
We will. See.
All right, so let's just get into it then. Point guard position again. Top overall spend ups on the slate. Jokic is 12-2. You got a questionable LaMelo Ball at 10K, and that's it. Those are the only 2 5-figure digit plays on the slate here. Ball 10K again, questionable. You got Cade at 96, Harden 94, Donovan Mitchell 9K. Your top 4 price guys.
Yeah, so I'm not playing LaMelo, even if he plays. I suspect there's going to be some type of limit. healthier Charlotte team. We're not going to get like 30 shot LaMelo right out of the gate. So I'm not getting there. It would have to be in a situation where you're playing 150 lineups. You have a couple shares. I'm not as high on Cade as I was last night on the show. Just looking at some things without Toby, the usage rate's fine. He just hasn't been as good as a fantasy point per minute player. I don't think that's a coincidence. Tobias Harris is a very respectable basketball player that, I think fits that lineup really well.
Yeah.
So, like, again, I think Cade fits best large field stuff. Obviously, that game is super slow, 2 bottom 10 teams in pace, and Miami's number 10 rated defensively. So I'm a little indifferent other than large field stuff on Cade. I think James Harden is a very, very, very interesting spend up at point guard. Like, there's a lot to like about the Clippers, and this is the half of the game I liked.
Yeah,
2.5. The Clippers side specifically, they're dealing with injuries. They've been involved in a lot of blowouts, and they face a team that the Clippers get a pace-up matchup against the 30th ranked defense in basketball. Yes, folks, they have overthrown the 3-win Washington Wizards as the worst defense in basketball.
Right.
And like, no one's playing James Harden. Right around single-digit ownership, like, teetering double-digit, single-digit all day.
Yeah.
And like, he is the best player, has the highest usage rate, has the most fantasy points per minute average on this team. I'm not saying that always translates to like, has to be successful. But we've seen when James Harden makes shots, he has a massive ceiling. And Utah doesn't really have any singular lockdown defender that they're going to put on him. So I do think James Harden is very interesting in tournaments. More so, he's my favorite above the 9K.
Sure.
Tier. And about Cleveland in general, all tournament plays. I think great tournament leverage if Brooklyn can keep it close. But there's nothing you're going to ask me about Cleveland that I'm like gung-ho to play. It's all very interesting tournament stuff.
I don't blame you. I mean, listen, Cleveland, Brooklyn's even now without like their other leading scorer, right? Like they're basically down to one shooter and a bunch of guys that we're unsure about with Cam J. We don't know, obviously, no Cam Thomas. They traded Dennis Schroeder, so difficult to want to trust that against Cleveland here. You got Maxey, no Joel Embiid. We talked about him on the show this morning. High usage rate leading on the team. De'Aaron Fox at $8,700 going up against Denver at home. Garland, as you mentioned, Cleveland, it is what it is. Tyler Hero, $7,600, and Jamal Murray at $73.
Yeah, this tier is obviously more interesting. You have Tyrese Maxey, $8,800. You look at some Philly stuff. Like, it's a good matchup. It's a really, really slow-paced game. Both teams, Philly's 29th in pace, Charlotte's 25th. Maybe that improves with LaMelo being back. But there's obviously things to like about Maxey. 5% usage bump up to 35.5%. 1 point, nearly 3 fantasy points per minute without Embiid, Caleb Martin, and Jared McCain. So there's a lot to like. 8,800 in a slow pace environment is fine. I think a way to be different would be playing De'Aaron Fox for $100 cheaper.
Sure.
In a better game. I mean, that game, Sacramento-Denver, is the second best, and if you want to call it the best, especially if Keegan Murray and Christian Brown sit, like that would probably be the best game on the board. Just the team's best like individual defenders in their starting lineups not being there opens up a lot of opportunity for offense. If like Christian Brown didn't sit, then Fox is being guarded by Julian Strawther, Jamal Murray. That's, advantage for Fox. And obviously De'Aaron Fox's floor has been very safe, even with Malik Monk in the starting lineup. I don't know what the Kings are going to do in terms of minutes if Keegan Murray sits. Kevin Huerter's officially out. We know Trey Lyles. I mean, they are like incredibly shorthanded if Murray sits. So I can see a scenario where De'Aaron Fox is just playing 40 minutes tonight in a, not having to deal with the altitude is always a good thing for teams against Denver. So I like Maxey a lot. I think De'Aaron Fox is a very interesting pivot. Garland, I already talked about it. I think Cleveland is what they are, as you put it. And I do think Tyler Hero is a little bit interesting. Like, this team came into the year like, oh, this is Jimmy Butler's team. This is Bam Adebayo's team. And Tyler Hero's like, yo, I got a haircut and I'm the best player on this team. I mean, he leads them in minutes played. He's tied with Bam for fantasy points per minute, 1.18, and leads the team in usage at 27.5. So like tied for first in all three categories that you want on fantasy, right? Minutes, fantasy points per minute, usage rate. Pretty good matchup. Detroit's bottom half of the league in defense. So yeah, I think Tyler Hero, a play that not a lot of people are going to get to. I think that's largely been the case, John, since he lost his shooting guard eligibility, right? He lost his shooting guard eligibility, and then people stopped playing Tyler Hero. 15% or so of the fields right now getting to Tyler Hero. So, yeah, I'm definitely interested there.
Okay. Underneath that group in the 6K range now, we have all of the Bulls guards in this, basically in the same range here. You got Monk, you got Keontae George. What are we doing when we get down 6K?
Didn't mention Jamal Murray. He's whatever.
Okay. Sure.
It's a good spot. Obviously, it's a good game. The Bulls I'm indifferent about until we have official update on Zach LaVine, sure. Because it's just hard to ever trust Josh Giddey ever. I mean, he's fine for tournaments. He has a very high ceiling, but I would say you can't predict the outcome. It's a very wide range of outcomes. So tournaments could like him more if there's no LaVine. Same thing for Kobe White. The price on both of them are super appealing if there's no LaVine. Jaden Ivey gets a really nice usage bump. I like Malik Monk. No thanks on Keontae George. That game's a nightmare for the Utah Jazz side.
Sure.
And Clarkson was upgraded from questionable to probable. So like there's not even that going in Keontae George's favor, just another high usage player inserted to their lineup. And then to get to IO at 62, you would have to have Zach LaVine out. So not the most appealing tier. Could be if Chicago rules out Zach LaVine, but until then, it's just that tier is just kind of whatever.
Yeah, totally cool with that. Where are we with value on point guard tonight? Is there one name that you're sticking out to you over the others?
Kevin Porter Jr. And I know that's a little contrarian from the group think. The group think is Drew Smith.
Drew Smith getting a lot of rostership here tonight.
And now it's kind of shrunk, like the gap between Drew Smith and Kevin Porter.
Yep.
And I think that makes sense because there's more unpredictability, and it's something that you and I have screamed at you for like the whole Eric Spoelstra tenure, right?
Yeah.
He is not tied to these guys. Like there is no tie. Just because Drew Smith played 28 minutes the last 3 games doesn't mean Drew Smith's going to play 28 minutes tonight, right? We've said it like ad nauseum outside of their big 3. What I think you can count on is that Kevin Porter, with the statuses of Terrence Mann and Derek Jones being out, is getting like a baseline of 24 minutes, right? Like there is a base of minutes, and there is a obviously higher ceiling when it comes to usage rate with Kevin Porter. I would say like Kevin Porter has the usage rate box checked. He has the fantasy point per minute box checked, 1.07 fantasy points per minute, 30% usage, both significantly higher than Drew Smith. And he also plays in blowout. Like if this game were to blow out, Kevin Porter plays.
Yeah.
So like there's a lot of boxes to check. Drew Smith has obviously benefited from guys being out. Those guys are also out again. He's slightly cheaper than Kevin Porter. He's $3,800 on DraftKings. He's $1,000 cheaper on FanDuel than Kevin Porter.
I was gonna say there is slightly, but like also significant maybe on a slate where you're trying to get Nikola Jokic in your lineup.
Correct. Just for transparency's sake, okay, I built today, as I've told you before, I built with Nikola Jokic and RJ Barrett, John. Mm-hmm. Do you think that I built with Drew Smith or without Drew Smith?
Probably with Drew Smith.
Built without Drew Smith with those 2 players in my lineup. Okay. I think that and I built with Kevin Porter. So like,
did you play Ricky Council as Cam the Man mentions?
I did not play Ricky Council.
Okay.
I like Drew Smith more than I like Ricky Council, but I think there's also a part of the field getting to a player in Drew Smith. Like he's not a bad fantasy point per minute player. He's 0.85 without some of these guys that the Heat are without. But I think the one thing that we just have to consider is when you look at the 34 minutes last game, excluding the 2 games prior, they handily had that game won against Toronto. 10 points doesn't tell you like the full story of what was happening in that game. They just played basically Bam, Hero, and then bench unit for like most of the fourth quarter. Haywood Highsmith never returned in that game. I mean, they did not really, they let the bench guys go. And Drew Smith was a beneficiary. And now, like, if Drew Smith doesn't come in and have the same impact and Duncan Robinson comes in and knocks down a bunch of shots early, is Drew Smith still playing 26, 29, 34 minutes? I'm not sure. So I think he's a fine play. I do. I'm also not like immediately going to like, got to start my builds with Drew Smith today. Now, if the game blows out, then you're into, we're into the territory where I'm going to lose because Drew Smith is probably going to be on the floor regardless. So, Detroit at home, been a better team. No Toby. We'll see how they look. I think the game stays close enough to where I don't have to worry about the Drew Smith blowout minutes. But I do give Kevin Porter the edge to Drew Smith. If you need the extra money, I understand going down to Smith. But I think ultimately, those are your 2 clear-cut value point guards of the day. And I don't think there's really like anything else we need to even really talk about.
Okay. Just on that one note, just like I know, and again, I know you study rotations just as much as we all do. His minute rotations are rather consistent. Like he played the entire fourth quarter, but he's also been playing the entire fourth quarter in some of these games. The last 3 games, actually, he's been like, that's been his rotation, right? He plays the entire second. He plays the entire fourth. The last 3 games for Miami. Hero plays all of third and then checks in late in the fourth quarter there. Hero checked in late in the fourth, but obviously was subbed out because it was kind of a blowout there. So I'm just wondering, like you mentioned, if the same guys are out, is that just what Drew Smith's rotation is? It's not that he's getting all this blowout run. The games happen to be blowouts, but if his minute rotation just naturally is sub and end of first, play all of second, sub and end of third, play all of fourth, as it's been the last 3 games or not.
It has. We've also seen this in different occasions, right? It's like we've seen, we figured out Duncan Robinson's going to play this rotation. He doesn't. Jaime Jaquez barely playing minutes right now. What if Jaime Jaquez first shift is like, oh, look, that's the rookie year Jaime Jaquez is back. Now, does that impact? Like there's again, I'm not disagreeing with you that he has clearly found himself in this rotation. Pelle Larsson's out. Nikola Jovic is out. Josh Richardson's out. So like they don't have necessarily like those guys to even turn to, but they do have like the hot hand theory. One of those games, Haywood Highsmith did not score. What if Haywood Highsmith makes a couple of shots? He is a very good defender that in a close game, they'd want on the floor. So I'm not doubting it. I don't think he's a bad play. I'm just offering the alternative think that like, the whole field is playing a guy right now that isn't starting, is on a team that is very fluid with minutes, even though his minutes, in theory, have been very consistent lately. Where I look at someone like Kevin Porter, I don't think that Porter's minutes ceiling is as high as Drew Smith's is because, the 37 minutes we saw from Kevin Porter, he played without Harden. Harden's playing tonight. But I do think in Kevin Porter's minutes, he is just naturally the more active player. He is a very high usage guy. So I still lean Porter over Drew Smith. I think there's a case to play both.
I got a question on Lonzo here. 20 minutes now, basically, the last 2 games for him. 28 fantasy points, ceiling effort against Charlotte. Report today that the Lakers are hot on the Lonzo ball trail. What do we think? Are the Lakers just going to try to bring the band back together here? Like what? They've been in on Ingram, they've been in on Lonzo. They go get Julius Randle.
I mean, dude, they kept the same. I mean, like they're in on. They need to be in on everyone because they just kept the same team that was mediocre last year. I mean, They changed the coach and said, actually, let's change the coach and draft somebody in the first round, and that's going to solve all our issues, right?
Is Lonzo contingent on the Levine news as well, or are you just out on Lonzo?
I mean, I'm not out on Lonzo. I don't necessarily agree on the point that Jordan said minutes should increase.
They have a ton of guards. They really don't
increase
need
to what? Yeah, I mean, like he's played 9 games. I'm not saying they won't increase.
My guess is it'd be look in February. When in February, the trade deadline, maybe Lonzo's minutes start to increase to show teams that he can play more minutes. But they're not gonna unless they go the super small lineup. But Patrick Williams is back, so
right. I mean,
I think Levine needs to be out for Lonzo to maybe see more minutes tonight.
Yes, agreed.
All right, let's go over to shooting guard here. Up at the top, we got again Donovan. We've talked about. We got Brandon Miller, 89. We did get that report while we were going over point guard that LaMelo tracking to play tonight. So we know the amount of shots and volume that LaMelo Ball brings. So that's going to impact Brandon Miller. I imagine with LaMelo active, you were no longer in on an $8,900 Brandon Miller here. Yeah, didn't think so. Norm Powell, though, at $6,500 is a guy that you and I have been high on. Are you looking to go back to Norm Powell?
Here's the well, John. Do you see the well?
Yeah.
I'm jumping right back into the well.
Coming right back in. Okay.
Right back in. I mean, it's one of those things where he did make open shots and then they got blown out.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's changed except it's a better matchup. It's an even better matchup than it was. Right. Still has great eligibility, shooting guard, small forward. Still a great price. They're still shorthanded. No Kawhi, no Derek Jones, no Terrence Mann. The minutes were well on its way to being mid-30s again. And without those guys, 28% usage, 1.18 fantasy points per minute, and now gets the worst rated defense in basketball. I'm going directly back to the Norm Powell well.
He had a bad game in quotations in a blowout loss where he played fewer minutes than he would have in a competitive game and still almost got you the 5X that you needed. So I'm with you there. It should have been a better spot. Plus the goated eligibility of shooting guard, small forward is nice. Jordan Clarkson, like you said, upgraded probable, played 31 minutes out of the gate in that matchup against Phoenix. We do talk a lot. The Clippers have a lot of guys that you can play defensively against them, but they're obviously still also down some men. Where are you with Clarkson tonight?
I'm indifferent.
Okay.
I'm largely indifferent about you in Utah.
Sure. We haven't liked anybody going against the Clippers often this season.
It's just maybe you can make the case he's coming off the bench, so there's this. He dodges the Chris Dunn defense, and Amir Coffey's a good defender. Batum's a good defender. He's going to see these players. Clippers are 21st in pace down spot for Utah. They're 7th in defensive rating. I mean, it's just not, and you're right. I mean, Derek Jones and Terrence Mann are 2 of their better perimeter defenders. Still a slow paced team, still a really good rated defensive team. So I'm indifferent. If you get to Clarkson, you'll get him really low in Utah. No one's playing anyone Utah. So that if you asked me how I'd rank the 3 guys in a row, Clarkson, Grady Dick, Kelly Oubre, he would probably be 3rd, but he's the lowest owned of the 3.
Yeah.
Grady Dick is one of the more popular plays on the slate. And I think Kelly Oubre presents a really interesting pivot. So Clarkson will be 3rd, but obviously large field stuff, he'll be the lowest owned.
Yeah, I had Grady Dick in our seasonal fantasy basketball league, and I traded him away thinking, they're getting quickly back. They're getting Scotty Barnes back. They're getting healthier, and then they all got hurt again. And here he is lighting it up. And for good reason, right? This was a dude that was taking 20 shots when it was just him and RJ Barrett earlier this year, and 19 shots against Miami right away. Pace up spot. Makes a lot of sense to plug him into your lineup. Just given the situation that they got in. I'm not really in on Oubre. Are you playing Kelly Oubre?
I am. Okay. I'm not I wrote him up today. I think he is an alternate pivot off Grady Dick, who's again very popular. I think shooting guard is not the best position. Mm-hmm. And if the field's going to gravitate to Grady Dick, who I'm not saying is a bad play, he's a 0.9 fantasy point per minute, 0.94 to be exact, without Quickly and Scotty Barnes, high usage rate guy. Then you look at Oubre, Philadelphia is shorthanded. We know that, right? They have kind of gone away from the Yabusele stuff the last 2 games. Will that be the case here? Remains to be seen.
Sure.
But obviously, Kelly Oubre has benefited greatly from everything that's gone on. 34 plus minutes in 4 straight games. I looked to see if the rebound stuff was real. It has been 15 potentials the last 2 games. It's about 13 in the last 3.
Yeah.
All 3 of them being double-doubles. It's not like he's going to take 20 shots a night.
No.
But if we're going to talk about a guy who is going to threaten double-double stuff, he gets a usage bump, obviously, without Embiid, McCain on the floor. Then, yeah, I think there is a world where him and Grady Dick, one of them's in the better game environment. One of them's really popular, right? The other guy is going to be significantly lower owned for $100 cheaper in a worse game environment. One of them's better play.
Sure.
But this is the alternate play if he's going to continue to rebound at the clip he's going to rebound at, because he's going to give you double figure points, just considering what they're missing. No Embiid, no McCain. So,
I mean, obviously the rebounding is a big thing for him right now. Pace up spots against Pacers and Bulls have been great to see him be able to produce while there's like Joel Embiid and those guys active. We just have, he's average the last 3 games, he's doubled his seasonal average in rebounds, right? So to me, like there's inherited risk, but like you said, 15 rebound opportunities a game is pretty good. Because if he doesn't get the double doubles, then you're looking more so in like the mid 20s in points, which is still fine. But you really need the 6-7x, I think, as the pivot tonight.
It's like that versus like you're relying, which why I would still lean the Grady Dick direction. Like
sure,
you're relying on the usage rate of Grady Dick versus like hopefully Kelly O can stumble into another. Or Oubre can stumble into another.
Do we think that Malik Beasley gets minutes here against Miami here?
Okay. Here's my GPP darling of the day, John.
Okay.
He is number 1. My one of my favorite, if not my favorite tournament play of the day.
Okay.
No one's playing him.
Right.
Everyone wants to play Simone Fontecchio. And I get it if he starts.
Right.
Everyone wants to play Ron Holland. I get it if he starts. But it's not as if Malik Beasley's minutes are going anywhere with Tobias Harris out.
Right.
And the only thing that's happened lately is that his price has depleted.
Right.
And in really, when you look at Beasley just throughout the year, right? If you look at the games that the minutes kind of went away, we're literally all blowouts. 24-minute loss against Boston, 16 minutes. 21-point loss against the Bucks, 18 minutes. 20-point loss against the Grizzlies, 20 minutes. Every other game, 26, 33, 27, 29, 33, 31, 34, 30, 29, 30, 44, 30. He's playing. There's an incredibly high ceiling because the shot volume, the 3-point volume at that. He has been pretty okay peripherally, better than I think we've gotten in years past.
Sure.
No Tobias Harris on the floor this year. I think this is like pretty indicative of and I think really interesting why no one's getting here. 25% usage rate, 1.07 fantasy points per minute.
Yeah.
There's obvious risk. He comes off the bench. There's no, certainty that Detroit keeps it competitive. But there's also no certainty that it's a 4.5-point spread. Miami has not been like a great team.
Miami's not been a good team. So they could very well have Cade just carry them. We didn't really mention Ivy either, but looking at the Beasley, Ivy's got a 30% usage rate without Kobe on the floor.
Yep. I think that there's like some really interesting stuff.
Paul Reed just re-signed with the Pistons.
I was gonna say there's really interesting stuff with the Pistons, including Paul Reed just randomly re-signing after a day after getting dropped.
I don't know what that's about.
I don't know what that's about. It's very maybe they're about to
a late scratch on Jalen Duran or something like that.
Yeah, possible. But I do think that there's like a lot. I have a lot of interest in Beasley. Like he's not projecting well at all. Not owned at all. 3%, 2% of the field. Well, 30% gets to Simone Fontecchio and another, double digit on Ron Holland. I mean, I do think like obviously there's a price gap between those
that's
two
just
players.
a salary thing, right? Because Holland, they're probably small forwards at this point, right? So Fontecchio is power forward at 32, Holland small forward at 34, right? You're paying $1,400 and $1,200 more dollars for Beasley. Holland's coming off of the monster game, so like naturally you'd think people would want to give him a look there.
The last 4 games Malik Beasley's been extended, John. 7, 6, 4, 5 made threes, 34 plus fantasy points. If Malik Beasley does that for a 5th time in the last 5 times he's been extended, he wins you a tournament tonight.
Sure.
Because no one's playing him. So I've kind of taken my stand on Beasley tonight. He's one of my
not shot well versus Miami this year, but we're not gonna. Well, I lied. This game was good. He did not shoot well in the first game against Miami.
I yeah, I mean he
bounced back. He did bounce back in the game. They won 123-121. 7 of 17, knocked down 5 threes in that game. So
we also know if Malik Beasley comes off the bench and hits his first couple shots, we're probably in for a pretty good night.
Yeah. Especially with no Toby, like there's really like they're not committed to a rotation tonight.
Yes,
so.
And I think that's like the like they could go small. Miami plays a small ball lineup. Yep. They could just space the floor everywhere, right? So I do have a lot of interest. I know we spent a lot of time on Blake Beasley, but
that's fine. All right, what about the rest of the value tier? Anybody? Jacoby Walter, Council, Duncan Robinson, Chris Dunn. Anybody?
These are all like pivot options. Like Walter benefited from some Davion foul trouble, but he's going to play low 20s minutes. If Davion stays out of foul trouble, really good game environment. Not sold on the Council minutes or the usage rate, but if you end up going there, he's 4,200. It's fine. Duncan Robinson and Chris Dunn both pivots off their respective teammates chalk, right? Like you play Duncan if you're not playing Drew Smith. You play Chris Dunn if you're not playing Kevin Porter. Like those are like the literal direct pivots on their respective teams.
Small forward.
One note, actually, the Christian Brown questionable news is obviously important. He's shooting guard. If you are holding out hope, this is the first. He hasn't missed a game this year. This is the first time he's like really been questionable. Julian Strawther probably starts in his place. So if you have like a roster spot in that scenario, I think Julian Strawther would be obviously a nice $3,800 play.
And who was, I missed who you said that was for. If he's out, who?
Christian Brown. Christian Brown.
2 ends. Small forward. RJ Barrett, as you mentioned, and we've talked a lot about core play for us here today. At home against Chicago. Team relatively to himself, though not obviously to himself. We'll talk about Jakub Jokic in a little bit as well, who's getting a lot of ownership run this evening.
Yep.
But I mean, we've seen this guy just put up monster numbers all season long. He is the most expensive he's been. He was a lot more fun when he was $8K. Now he's $9,100, but obviously still paying that off.
Yeah, and like I don't think the peripheral stats are going to go anywhere. And you expect RJ to not be 5 of 18 from the floor. He's a 45% shooter. So as long as the peripheral stats stick, they start him at point guard again. The shooting gets a little better with no like real on-ball defense. I mean, they'll obviously Patrick Williams will be guarding him at times. Ayo Dosunmu will be guarding him at times. But RJ should have his way here offensively and peripherally. I'm not. The price is the price because it's like you said, it really is everything flowing through RJ. Leads the team in usage, leads the team in fantasy points per minute without Scotty Barnes.
Yeah, I agree. So easy play there.
Yep.
Zeus agree?
Likes RJ Barrett.
Buckets here, $7,400. I didn't mean to go over DeRozan. Do you like DeRozan?
No, I like Paul George, though.
I like Paul George. There you go. Okay, $8,300.
That he exists in the world.
He exists. It's true. I was going to talk about power forward, but we can go here too.
Okay. Yeah, I like PG. PG 8, which doesn't flow as well as PG 13.
It really doesn't, right?
Yeah. It's a shame he can not be PG 13, but PG 8. Yeah, he's good. Solid pivot off of Tyrese Maxey.
All right. What about DeRozan?
A little different. I would say probably like him more if there's no Keegan Murray.
Okay. Bucket $7,400. Does he decide to show up and play some basketball today?
I have no idea. He looks pretty good. I mean, 7,400 is a really good price. There's obviously a very high ceiling when he does look like he wants to play basketball. Will he show up to play basketball? I don't know. Does he just feel like being a troll today? Does he feel like participating in class, right? Is he showing up to class, getting an A in the group project, but he just presented the project? He didn't actually that's all he did. I have no idea. But at the end of the day, he's a very good price. It's a very good matchup. And, Jimmy is always live to get to the free throw line 16 times in a game and be like, oh yeah, need to play $7,400 Jimmy Butler.
Yep, agreed. You mentioned you were iffy on Brooklyn, Cleveland as a whole, but obviously Cam Johnson is probably poised to take 25 shots tonight. Haven't really been in on much Utah, but 69 for Laurie. I mean, listen, as the price starts to go down, like he becomes at least a little bit more interesting on a whole.
Yeah, I mean, the price is nice. But that's really all I got. The price is nice.
All right, that's fine. Where are you going next?
I think this position is really, 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 really terrible.
Okay.
So I've largely just played Malik Beasley here if I'm not spending up, or RJ Barrett. I think there's obviously the Schroeder stuff you could play here if he sits. Ron Holland at 3,400, small forward only if he's starting. But I'm really out of names other than that. I don't really like this position whatsoever.
Okay. Going on over to the power forward position. Some ownership on here in the value range. We've talked a lot of these guys already up at the top. Collins, the son, we haven't discussed. We've talked extensively. Utah Clippers and $7,800.
Yeah,
it was a little bit expensive. Bridges is back. Played his 27 minutes in that first game. They have 25 minutes. They have LaMelo Ball back. Maybe Bridges gets up to 27 to 30 tonight. Any interest there?
Yeah, I think that there's interest. That's probably a safe projection. I think I put him at 29.5. So basically in line with what you said. Yeah, I mean, he's, 16 shots in 25 minutes. I know that was sans LaMelo, but he's a good rebounder. He's a good playmaker. Usually, you talked about it last night on the show. Usually won't go over 6 from 3.
Usually will,
so, I think he's definitely safe at 6,100.
You mentioned liking Aaron Gordon last night. Still in on Aaron Gordon today, 5,500.
Yeah, that my thoughts on Aaron Gordon have not changed whatsoever. He's significantly underpriced. He's probably $1,000 too cheap, and he's benefited from returning from injury. Right, he got hurt, played 4 minutes. That's fed into the algorithm. Comes back, only plays 24 minutes because that was his return game. That's fed into the algorithm.
Yeah.
Then has 2 good games. Then is in back-to-back blowouts. That's fed into the algorithm. And here we are at $5,500 in an elite spot. He's been well over fantasy per minute this year. So at 5,500, where you're likely to get Aaron Gordon 33, 34 plus minutes, I guess, depending on what Christian Brown's status is, we could even see Gordon's minutes up 35, 36. Then, yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a single worry here. I mean, 237 implied points in this game. Yeah. Not even, and this is what makes me believe the upward limits of his minutes are there's nothing, not even on the injury report today. He's been listed every day since he's been back, not even listed. So 5,500, I think he's a core play of mine actually today.
Yeah, I like that. We just got a little bit of an ownership adjustment there. He's around 17% here for the evening. So they're
not surprised. I think that's the field catching on. Probably a little bit,
sure,
a little bit too cheap there.
KPJ up to 26%. Again, that wasn't a huge move. Who are we looking at with Drew Smith? Right, was the other one? Drew Smith sitting at 33%. So
yeah, the Drew Smith ownership has not gone away. Honestly, the things that would change ownership today is if and when we get a Pistons lineup.
Yep, and Levine out.
And Levine being out.
Sure.
And obviously, I don't think we are going to get any of that late stuff before lock, right? Like we're not going to get the Brown update. We're not going to get the Keegan Murray update.
Who would benefit
lock.
from the Keegan play there?
Dude, I mean, they're down Herter too, right? So like Kevin Herter's out. Trey Lyles is out. I think
you go small with Ellis and play like a DeRozan power forward lineup.
So I think Keon Ellis is probably the guy who plays the most, but like I'm not sold that he would start. I think there's a couple options. Colby Jones is someone that has played a few minutes. Isaac Jones is someone who's been in their rotation as well. And or McDermott, Jay Crowder. That would probably be, but like Crowder's been DMPing for the last week. So
they signed him immediately, played him 27 minutes, and then have stopped.
Remember they started him? They signed him and started him on the same day, and then like he has not played that many minutes since. I think
Mason Jones back on their team.
Good. Yeah, I mean, they have a lot of like question marks. I'd assume just like whatever it is, whatever this disgusting 3K play that would start is, Keon Ellis would be like the guy that plays the most at the end of the day.
Would they double big? I mean, remember Sabonis started as a power forward.
They haven't done it, so I don't think they would. But I think Keon Ellis would probably play the most. Okay. Does that excite me? No, it doesn't, because it's like Keegan Murray being out is not DeMar DeRozan or De'Aaron Fox being out. But yeah, I mean, obviously the Keegan news is noteworthy.
Jonathan Mogbo is your highest projected rostered player of the night. 29 minutes in that last game. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm playing Mogbo. It's good chalk. You obviously have to like the minutes. You like you like to start, right? He started. You like the minutes. He's a very good rebounder. He's a very good passer. I would say the one thing we're a little concerned here is the shot volume last game. He hasn't necessarily been shy to shoot, though. It's not like he's out here chucking, but we did see him 9, 7, and 10 shots in the 3 games prior.
Mm-hmm.
There is just a shorthandedness to this rotation that provides him the opportunity. And in that game, he played a lot of the fourth quarter where it wasn't all that competitive. And he played with the starters in that run. So like RJ played and Mogbo played and Pirtle. So I'm willing to eat this chalk and just play Mogbo. Power forward center eligibility obviously helps his case for a lot of ownership. So I'm very interested in Mogbo. He's a very active player. Was the first round of the second pick this year. First pick of the second round. That was a very
first round, second pick. I didn't remember that, but
that was a slip for sure. But I like Jonathan Mogbo quite a bit.
And then you mentioned the Fontecchio chalk, 31% on Simone here. 17 minutes, 19 minutes, game before that. Listen, we loved Simone Fontecchio when he was with Utah. We were excited to see him get traded to Detroit, and then they iced him.
He was good. Well, he was good for stretches last year, and then it was just like, I
mean, he is obviously a bit limited, on what his skill is, right? Like he's a 3 and maybe D guy, but he's that's basically what his role is there. So
I like him if he's starting.
Sure.
Like I'm gonna play him at 3,200.
If you get the lineup and he's starting at 3,200, it makes a lot of things. Makes your life a little bit easier to fit some things around there.
It doesn't it doesn't make it any worse if it's Holland, right? I would say the worst case scenario is Asar Thompson.
Right.
Asar Thompson. Because Asar Thompson,
you don't know what his minutes would be.
I don't think there's a necessarily we don't know what anyone's minutes.
I would be surprised if one guy dominates the minutes to that position. Right?
I would definitely be surprised as well. But Simone, obviously, like when you think about Toby, he's a small ball 4 that can space. That's why I'd assume it wouldn't be Thompson, because like he is not a small ball 4 that can space. He's not a floor spacer at all, and also
not really good, at least not yet an offensive player.
Yeah, really. I mean he is good on the glass and he's very active. Just him and his brother are very similar, like in that way. Simone is of the 3 guys is like clearly the one guy that will space the floor the best, and Holland is a volume guy. So,
Yeah.
I
mean, guy, he had 11 of 14.
Yeah, that was absurd. Obviously, a lot of garbage time involved into that, but I whoever the starter is, it is interesting if that starter is Montecchio or Holland.
Yeah, agreed. Well, moving on over to center now. We got a couple of center questions. Anyways, do we trust the Philly Bigs? Thoughts on Zubac against Kessler tonight? So let's get into center. Yeah. Obviously, the Joker is here. You mentioned that you built your lineup around him. I would venture to do the same. More often than not, you want to talk about jumping back into the well. There's no bigger well to jump into than the Joker here. Especially with all the value that's on the board, it makes it just easy to get to him today.
There's a lot of value.
Not a lot of ownership going to him today. Only 18% more people playing Jakob Poeltl.
I tweeted it out today. I said over 80% of the field is fading Nikola Jokic while I sit here and try to jam him into all my lineups because I understand he had a bad game and I understand he's super expensive, but he is the best player on the slate. And let me do this exercise, John.
Yes.
How many players?
2. I was just thinking about it.
What? 2?
2. I was just thinking probably pre-thinking about your question before you said it. I think Cade Cunningham
has 70.
Can get there, yeah.
Who? Okay, let me phrase it this way then.
Sure.
Jokic, what is Jokic a base projection fantasy points for you for Jokic?
I think it's 70 at this point. That's his seasonal average. That is his averaging 70 DraftKings points. Right.
Who else would you give 55 to tonight? Just this slate specific. Is there anybody?
I think Cade can get there. I think RJ can get there.
Yep.
Sabonis can. Harden certainly can if that game stays competitive.
Okay, what about 60?
I still give Cade. We've seen him go over 60. Harden, we've seen go over 60 this year. Because those guys can triple-double. So they had in Sabonis, we haven't seen it, but again, he went for 58 last game, right? Something like that. So
if Matt, he went 60.
60.
He had 30. He had 30-20.
You need triple-double guys to be able to get to
Maxi, if he scores you 45 actual.
45 actual, yeah. So there are guys that have touched it. I think Cade and RJ Barrett probably give you the most realistic opportunities tonight to get there. But even that is 10 to 20 fantasy points lower than the average production from Jokic. Now, again, he is 12-2 for that reason.
Right.
And we see Jakob Poeltl at his level because we've seen him go for 45 to 50 fantasy points this year when it was a 2-man game, really, on that team. So if you're building fair and balanced lineups today with all the value that's on the board and you're playing an RJ, a Poeltl, and a Cade or something like that, I mean, maybe that's where people are thinking okay, I don't need one guy to get 90 if I get 3 guys to go 50, so.
No, that's and it's not a bad way to think, but also if my guy goes for 90 and your guys don't go for 50, well, who's in the driver's seat now? Sure. And truthfully, I don't know what's more likely.
No,
I don't know what the more likely outcome is. This guy who just went for 90 a few games ago, or even if the guy gives you the 72, right? I mean, the 9 shots is such an aberration for what the Jokic we've seen from this year.
Yeah, you're taking 9 shots a minute, it felt like, the last couple of games. So pretty close. 40. He's taking a shot a minute, basically, the last couple of games.
All that to say he's the 4th highest rostered center. Wouldn't surprise me to see that flip to 5th or 6th, just based on a couple of guys right below him.
Yeah.
And I think there shouldn't be, and Matt just said it, most of the value looks bad. I'm not saying the value looks great, but I think there's a lot of really good value that you don't have to just succumb to I'm just going to play Simone, whatever happens. I'm just going to play Drew Smith, whatever happens. You don't have to do that. I think there's plenty of other value options on the board to help you comfortably fit Jokic. I said it at the beginning of the show. I fit Jokic and RJ Barrett in my line that I built, and I don't have Drew Smith in my line.
Sure.
So I think I'm extremely comfortable with the value, comfortable enough with the value to get to 12-2 Jokic. And I get why. I mean, the center's a really good. I think center's a very good position today. But
our guy Sasha here wants to know thoughts on Shake Milton tonight. I know you overall were out on Brooklyn, but just another value option for us here.
I mean, just because Schroeder is gone, I think like the same thing still applies. If Brooklyn stays close, there's obviously things to like.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big pace up spot for Brooklyn. If there's anything to take from this game, Cleveland's 8th in pace. I think that's kind of sneaky, but Cleveland being 8th in pace, Brooklyn's 30th. If Brooklyn plays fast, no Dennis Schroeder, so like we don't know what their offense is going to look like. Sans Schroeder, sans Cam Thomas. We haven't had to worry about that very much this year. There's obviously a case for Shake Milton to have a big game. There's obviously a case for Cam Johnson to have a big game. We've seen Keon Johnson have a big game here and there. We've seen Tyrese Martin randomly have 30 actual points in a game. I'm a little indifferent about Shake.
Yeah.
The only thing that would shake that up, John, is him being in the starting lineup.
Okay.
Then I would, I think, have a little bit more interest if we got the Shake Milton starting lineup. Because even when you take Schroeder, Thomas, Zaire Williams off the floor, he's still just been a 20% usage guy. It's about a 4% increase. It's not like, obviously that's appealing when you get a 4% increase, but to 20%, 0.96 fantasy points per minute, it's just okay.
Yeah. All right. So the rest of the center position, we mentioned Sabonis coming off of a monster game himself. It's Pelicans 67 actual. Largely just been pretty consistent here on the year, giving you the mid 40s, high 40s, low 50s. He does have a couple of 60 bombs here, as we were talking about guys that can get there. So if you're not going to the Joker tonight and you want to spend up at center, you can. But your chalk play tonight is Jakob Poeltl. We have jokingly called him Jakob Jokic here because, again, some of his early performances, 61, 52, 58 against Detroit, Boston, and Indiana. Now we get Chicago, pace up spot here. He's going to see a lot of minutes. Should see a lot of minutes in this matchup. Where are you with the $7,300 Poeltl tonight?
So I like him. Obviously, you look at the numbers, right? 21% usage, 1.3 fantasy points per minute without Barnes quickly. I think that matters.
Mm-hmm.
I am a little okay, did Jonathan Mogbo entering the starting lineup have anything to do with the Poeltl rebound numbers going down? Did RJ Barrett grabbing 10 rebounds have to do impact Jakob Poeltl's rebounds a little bit? Or am I just overlooking it? Or am I just overthinking that?
Yeah, I mean, he's been good ribanding. He ran into Bam. He played 27 minutes.
I am perfectly fine.
He was also hurt in that game, right? Or
the back spasms. Yeah. I think he's a very good play if you want to play him. He's very cheap on DraftKings, very cheap on FanDuel, especially with the block steal upside that he has. He is the highest rostered player of the slate, or one of them. So, if that's chalk you want to eat, it's the best game on the board. Salute. I don't got much else. He's a very, very good play.
How many Raptors are you playing tonight?
I would max probably 4.
So the 4 being Barrett, Mogbo, Poeltl, and Dick.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't differentiate from them. If Walter and Mitchell were a little cheaper, then I think you could probably flip-flop. Sure. Agbaji is obviously your pivot of guys that are playing big minutes, but he's been largely bad on a per minute basis at his price. But yeah, probably max 4. Comfortable with more comfortable with 2 or 3.
Okay. Where else are we going at center tonight?
LaMelo officially in, by the way. Okay. So they had the Drummond question, or the Philly big question.
Sure, Philly big question. Yeah.
I like Drummond. I think that obviously he has been whatever this year.
Mm-hmm. Levine out.
Oh, it's just the worst. It's just the worst news ever.
Dalen Terry out. We're getting more Chicago news.
I just wanted it to be a normal evening. I just wanted a normal night, John.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's the NBA. It is. Honestly, it is a normal night. It's the NBA. This is what happens in the NBA.
Do you have any Patrick Williams interest tonight at 4,200?
No, I would not. Not with the minutes. He only played like 14 minutes the other day. They said 20 to 24. He came off the bench and played 14. No, not for me. I like the Drummond stuff at 55. He's been just about a 1.1 fantasy point per minute player. Got hurt in the Detroit game, was smashing 4 to the last 5 games. He basically would have been pretty good when extended. This is a traditionally big center room for Charlotte with Mark Williams and Nick Richards. So, yeah, I like Drummond 55. I am very uncertain about Yabusele. Maybe I shouldn't be because, like, when Embiid's been out, he's played a lot of minutes.
Sure.
Do we think that's going to happen here, though? What do we think Yabusele's minutes look like?
I don't know, because they've started him, but then they haven't played him much. Obviously, again, taking out Embiid, like he now is at least a backup 5 rotation too.
I know, but he didn't Embiid got hurt and didn't play an entire second half. And Yabusele played 4 minutes and 30 seconds and never came back into the game.
That's fair.
So, like, I'm not saying I'm not like necessarily saying it's bad play. I just don't know, like, why the minutes were what they were. And maybe no Caleb Martin, and Joel Embiid, it leads to more Yabusele minutes. But of the two, I prefer Drummond. If you're playing like 150 lineups, then I do think like you can, differentiate in some of them and play some Yabusele to leverage the field there. But, I'm not going overweight on Yabusele.
Okay. Anybody else here at center that you like, 5K and under?
No, I do think we should probably just revisit the Bulls stuff.
Okay.
So Lonzo Ball, John.
Yeah.
It's a very small sample because he's basically playing all his minutes with Zach LaVine. But 36-minute sample this year without LaVine. 7% usage increase, which is a large usage increase. 1.26 fantasy points per minute. So I do think that there's a case for Lonzo. I don't think the minutes necessarily like go much higher, but maybe we do see a couple tacked on. Nikola Vucevic is the leader in terms of fantasy points per minute, 1.34. No Zach LaVine. Josh Giddey, nice increase in terms of usage. So is Kobe White, both over 3%. Giddey, 1.29 fantasy points per minute. Kobe White, 1.06. Both like really appealing tournament plays. Io 0.88 fantasy points per minute, not a lot there. Patrick Williams 0.7, not a lot there. I think we're really focused on Vooch, Giddey, Kobe White, some Lonzo and large field stuff. I guess the question is, you're removing like a really, really, really high usage guy off the floor, like the Bulls' best scorer. I'd be curious, what they do with their starting lineup. I'd assume this is like just probably plug Patrick Williams back in and move on because that's just what they've done. But there's a lot of different directions. If Bazulis were to start, I think Bazulis is really interesting. If like THT were to start, I think THT becomes really interesting.
Sure.
But Kobe White, 6,400, both guard eligibility with Toronto Toronto, when you look at where they rank defensively, they are not good. They're a bad defense. They currently, in terms of defensive rating, are 23rd and they're 11th in pace. So like there's a reason why this game had 240 implied points, right? So I think the Bulls are very, very interesting. I'm going to have a big playbook update because it was kind of just awaiting the news.
Yeah.
But the Bulls went from like, I don't know how interested I am to like putting a lot of their core pieces into your lineups because of how bad the opposition is and how good this game environment is.
So. I was going to say, would it take you off RJ Barrett to play some of the Bulls now at this point?
I mean, I get it just depends on what you want. Like, do you want to be more balanced? Do you play Barrett?
Mm-hmm.
And if you want still, like, you can now, if you want to come off RJ and keep, like, if you want to still play Jokic, it's an easy pivot here.
Right.
Like, you're coming off RJ to the Bulls. And I think obviously this game is just going to be chock full of plays, right? It's just going to be incredibly interesting. Oh man. I mean, it's obviously a tough question. I think the minutes ceiling is clearly Drew Smith. Like if you're playing minutes and if Drew Smith's minutes don't go away, then the answer, if you want the stability that Drew Smith provides, is Drew Smith. I don't see a scenario where this, unless we hear from Billy Donovan on like where Lonzo's minutes are just suddenly now like 25, 20. If Billy Donovan came out and said like mid 20s Lonzo, I'd click Lonzo right now and just move on.
Even probably 40% of the field, right?
Yeah. So I still think it's Drew Smith for safety.
Very curious when this ownership update comes where the field ends up finding themselves.
I'm going to say this. Drew Smith is safer, even though I'm still a little sketchy there because we know how Miami's minutes can be handled at times. Lonzo is a very solid tournament pivot. Point guard, shooting guard eligibility, super good peripherally, good 3-point shooter. So Drew Smith a little safer. I definitely think Lonzo is interesting though.
I feel like Drew Smith won't hurt me if I avoid him. I mean, he is not a high. We don't know this like 0.84.
0.84, yeah. I have it written down the playbook. I think it's 0.84 exactly. Yeah.
So he needs basically max minutes at 0.84 to really kill you. Now, again, the only reason you're playing him is to jam in Jokic plus Barrett or Cade or something like that. Because you need that under 4K punt play really to get it there. But if he gives you 20 fantasy points at 4K, like that's fine, but it's not like earth shattering, so that's fine. Bam or Vuk? I think at this point we'd go Vuk.
That's a FanDuel question for sure. Mike's a FanDuel player. 82 versus 83 on FanDuel. Bam is $100 more. I'd probably go Vooch. I would say your one obviously like thing we have to consider here is Vooch is dealing with the illness. Now he's probable. But if that is at all concerning,
we've seen Vooch go for some big games here.
Dude, 1.34 fantasy points per minute. No Levine. That is a big number. It leads the team.
We had a game without Levine earlier this year too. Was it any of these like 60 fantasy point games that he put up?
Let's look. We can.
Did Levine play against Detroit on 11-18? Let's see. That's the 11-18. He did play on 11-18.
I'm going to his basketball reference page to find out what games he missed. Zach LaVine did not play 11-4, 11-6, 11-7.
11-4, 11-6, 11-7. Let's see. 11-7, 36, 11-4, 55. And what was the other one?
11,
4, 6, and 7?
Yeah, 4, 6, and 7. Yep.
All right. Well, he only had one good game in that stretch against Utah. Only played 25 minutes in a blowout loss to Dallas. Played 30 minutes in a blowout loss to Minnesota, but was 11 of 15 in that game. So 25 actual, 23 actual, had the 55-point double-double. And a game they also lost, but against Utah in a super high-scoring game. So, but again, this guy's giving you a bunch of 50 fantasy point games here this year. So.
The game environment too, like in that question, like Heat Detroit versus Chicago, Toronto. I mean, there is a stark difference. One game is 20 points higher projected in terms of implied points. So
agreed. All right, well, let's build a lineup then. Bulls line. Bull. All right, here we go. Mogbo still your top guy, but Lonzo. Updated now. Patrick Williams is your highest projected owned player.
Did we get an update that Patrick Williams is not limited? Is that a
I
thing?
don't know. I don't know. But he is currently the highest projected rostered player. Mogbo, Pirtle, Barrett, Kobe White is where we're at right now. So.
I'll say it right now. If Patrick Williams is the highest rostered player of the slate, I will absolutely be okay losing if Patrick Williams beats me, because he played 14 minutes in his return after a month absence. I cannot see a scenario like where he's suddenly playing 35 coming off a foot injury. This isn't like this was a lower body injury that clearly impacted his like ability to run and
and we'll get another update too. Once official lineups come out. So again, after the show today,
crazy.
I'll upload what we currently have, and then as we get closer to roster lock, I'll also throw a new one in there. Lonzo 11% now, by the way. So Lonzo is getting a little bit of love there. Kobe White up to 30%.
Nobody playing Vooch.
Yeah, at least yet, no one's playing Vooch. We'll see if that gets updated or not. Bazulis up to 19%, Giddy 18%. So it's where it's at. I mean, again, Pirtle is just also significantly cheaper than Vooch as well. So
even that's even on FanDuel as well. There's $400 cheaper than Vooch as well.
Little ownership bump to Joker, probably because now more people are playing the Chicago
Patrick Williams. I mean,
all right. Well, let's get our lineup build then here. Are we playing the Joker, or are we on one of these mid-tier options?
Yeah, let's play the Joker.
Okay. Lead me here. Where do we want to? What do we want to do?
Let's play KPJ.
Okay, KPJ.
I still like KPJ over Lonzo. I still like KPJ over Drew Smith.
Beasley.
Yeah, I would say move Beasley to small forward, and we could play like Kobe White or something.
Yeah, that works. Kobe White. Power forward to become off of RJ now, and like
we're gonna have to probably come off RJ, yeah. Unless we wanted to do a fair and balance and where we're not playing Jokic.
Play the chalk Patrick Williams.
I don't. No, please don't. Unless I'm telling you right now, if we do not get word that there's like the restriction is different, like I cannot play a $4,200 Patrick Williams if he's limited or like it's just impossible.
Let's go this way.
200 off Aaron Gordon. Sad.
I know.
Don't play Bridges. Play Aaron Gordon.
57.
Aaron Gordon 55.
Gordon 55. 59 util. Grady Dick. There we go. There's our comeback. So we got Porter, White, Beasley, Gordon, Jokic, Giddy, Mogbo, and Dick. Not playing RJ Barrett now. We're playing two Bulls, which is fine. We know Zach LaVine in there. We still got our little game stack there with Chicago, Toronto getting Grady Dick and Mogbo in there, still playing Nikola Jokic. So without using Drew Smith and some of the other punt values, again, we don't know what Detroit's lineup is going to look like. And Drew Smith is available. We haven't got an update yet totally on Chicago. So like you mentioned, if Patrick Williams is going to play all those minutes or not, but Kevin Porter, White, Beasley, Gordon, Jokic, Giddy, Mogbo, and Grady Dick is the example lineup for tonight. Again, go check out the playbook. We got the 7-day free trial going on, so you can check that out as well. FANasyStorm.com/win. Promo code Let's Go to take advantage of that 7-day free trial for everybody. Grande and I, again, we won't be back with you guys until the Thursday slate.
Yep.
Just one game tomorrow, no games on Wednesday. So if you want to talk some ball, you got to find us in the Discord or on Twitter. Until then, everybody, good luck tonight with your lineups, and we will catch you guys later.